Hey, everybody. Welcome to Day Drinking with Authors. I'm your host, Molly Fader, Molly O'Keefe. Today, my guest is Adriana Anders, and we're talking about her incredible survival instinct series. The last one is called Uncharted, but you're going to want both. I mean, I'm here to tell you, you're going to want both. For those of you who are new to day drinking, the interview series, not like the hobby, I want to let you know that there's so many ways to sort of be a part of this world if you're looking for more. I have a Facebook group called Day Drinking with Authors where you can watch the interviews live. If you're listening to this on a podcast, or if you're watching the interviews live, go find it on the podcast. I also have you can subscribe now and get all of the good information that's going to be coming out in the new year. I've got a lot of really exciting authors lined up. I can't wait to tell you about them. I also have authors this year who have gone on to do such incredible things with these books. And I was incredibly lucky to have a chance to talk with them before their books exploded. For example, Marissa Stapley's novel Lucky, about the woman who finds the woman who buys the lottery ticket but can't cash it in because she's wanted by the police. She's a grifter. That's a recent Witherspoon's book of the book club book for December. So you can listen to that interview. Anyway, come find me on Facebook. Subscription links will be in the description. I can't wait to chat with you. And really, I can't wait to talk to Adriana Anders, who is, in France drinking mulled wine the way we all wish we were. So let's bring her in. Hello, Adriana. It's funny, we were just talking for a half hour and now we're like, oh, hello. So you are having mulled wine. I'm having coffee. Will you tell me how you make your mulled wine? What do you do?
Yes. So red wine, some kind of a sweetener. Sometimes I'll put in just orange juice. Sometimes a little sugar, sometimes honey, depends on what's to hand. And then mulling spices. Today I put in a stick of cinnamon, star anise, and cloves. And then I put in slices of orange. But I actually did a special thing for another recipe, which I put in here today too, which is I made a simple syrup out of those spices to make this ridiculous cranberry Cosmo, like Christmas spice Cosmo. And I did not love the Cosmo, but it's really good in here. Yeah. So. Cheers.
In my now coming up on 2 years of day drinking, one of the best drinks I had was with Sonali Dev, and we made this sangria with a spiced simple syrup, and it was all those things, right? But with cardamom too. And it's like it was the kind of thing that when you're done, you're licking out the bottom of the pan. Delish. Yeah, that would go really well. Well, next time I'll join you in a mulled wine. But today we're talking about the second book in your survival instincts, Uncharted, but we're really going to be talking about all of them. And we're really going to be talking about most of your career, but I have to read the back cover copy because my mother really likes it when I do that. So hold on just a second. Hotshot pilot Leo Edelweiss is afraid of nothing and no one. So when she's asked to evacuate a man from the wilds of Alaska, she doesn't hesitate. But with enemies in close pursuit and the weather turning sour, what should have been a simple mission quickly shifts to disaster. And there's only one way out. When Elias Thorne disappeared, he was America's most wanted. Now he's spent more than a decade in one of the most remote places on Earth, guarding a dangerous secret. Leo's arrival, quickly followed by a team of expert hunters, leaves him no choice but to join forces with her and run. Neither is prepared for their reluctant partnership to flare into something as wild and untamed as the frozen world around them. But as desperately cold days melt into scorchingly hot nights, Leo and Elias must learn to dig deep, trust in each other, and forge a bond as strong as the forces of nature. You're like, yeah, I wrote that. So you have to tell me. So when I was introduced to your writer, it was the Under Her Skin series, which was it's a super sexy, incredibly romantic, but incredibly internal romance novel. And these books, the survival instincts are not they are internal. It's like a locked door romance. It is the hardest kind of romance to write, but they're extremely external. So you have to tell me how this series came about. Were you like, I need a challenge and I want to research Alaska a lot?
No, I didn't want a challenge. I wanted things to be very easy, but then I went the opposite direction. No, So first of all, I love suspense. My go-to authors for a long time were Lee Child. I loved Robert Parker, people like that. And my favorite movies are The Bourne Identity, and
Ooh.
I love the Matrix series. These are all the things that kind of get me revved up. So I love suspense. I had this image when I initially went to my publisher. I had this idea of doing this 24-hour in stuck in one place sort of series where all of these different things came together. And so it was like Die Hard plus, 3 other plus 24 hours. I mean, the amount of work in that series. Anyway, it would have been complicated. The last book in that 3-book series that I proposed was basically Whiteout. And she looked at the proposal and she went, I want that one, and just pointed at it. And she said, I want these books. And she said, I want more than one of them. So then we just started thinking of, what can bring all of these different stories together. And I don't think she expected me to come back with a virus. I don't think that she expected that.
Well, it's funny. I mean, because the first book, Whiteout, which takes place in Antarctica, you talk about the virus a lot. The virus in this book is almost a MacGuffin. You're like, yeah, there's a virus, but we're running. I was like, that's how we want to treat a virus in 2021.
Well, basically, yeah, I wrote it in 2019 and 2020. It's sort of over the two. I wrote it in 2019 and I revised and edited in 2020. And you can absolutely tell because the virus is almost non-existent. I did not want to write about that virus. It was a virus that didn't affect children in my original version. And I was just like, nope, I don't want to. So yeah, there's less of the virus. The theme is still there. It's still part of the overarching plot, but it's definitely taken a back seat to, romance.
So when my first loves of romance were not romantic suspense, and I kind of came to it late. And I was, and this is a bit of a story to tell you how much I love these books. I came to it late. My kids were born, so I think my son was 18 months and my daughter was newly born. And my mom is like, we're going to go on this family vacation to this remote island off the coast of Michigan. It's called Beaver Island. So you just have to bring your husband and your toddler and your newborn, drive through Michigan, get on a ferry for 2 hours, arrive on this island, pack and plays and plan a few meals and all this stuff. And I was just like it was so overwhelming. And a friend of mine who was, deeply in love with Suzanne Brockman was like, read these books. You'll like these books. And I had never read them. And so I take them with me on this thing. And I was like, oh, I get to read a book where I am special and I need to be saved and taken care of by a very competent man or woman. I mean, right? But that all of the decisions are outside of my control. I am only, as a reader, I'm only reacting. And it was powerful. It was a powerful romantic suspense moment. And I had that same moment with these books, except particularly in this last one, Leo is just as competent. So can you talk a little bit about how you created these characters, what you were after?
Well, Leo from the beginning was going to be, so there's a prequel, which is Deep Blue, in which they're on an oil rig, a decommissioned oil rig. And Leo shows up to help out with the team surrounding Eric, who's the hero of that book. And she's part of the team. She's a pilot. She's really kick-ass. She's been in the military. She knows her way around, weapons and aircrafts and all that stuff. Aircraft, I guess you're supposed to say. And she...
You're the one who's done the research.
I should say it right. I know. But she was just clearly from the beginning, she knew she was there for a reason. She was a Black woman. She had fought her way to that place. Her position was not gotten by accident. She was as kick-ass as she needed to be. So she was there, and I needed a hero who would be equal to her, who would be worthy of her. And that was really hard to come by.
Yeah.
I it took me a long time to figure out who Elias was, because she was there for one thing and he ends up being something completely different. I wanted him to, the thing that I love in a hero is I want a hero who has a good heart and who is just a good person. I have a hard time writing assholes. I really do. And I've tried, but I've never been able to. So he has this really terrible reputation and he's in this really difficult situation, but he is the best of us. And so the two of them together, I adored them because they were both so perfectly competent, but they sort of completed each other when they were needed.
Yeah.
And
They were total teammates, like
yeah,
total lockstep teammates,
yeah,
which I feel like presented for you a very difficult challenge in a lot of different ways, but that you had to create a plot line, an external plot line that was going to really cause some grief for these very competent. I mean, so you had to throw Alaska in spring at them in all of its danger. Like, so tell me about researching some of this stuff. Have you, because I mean, I know you, but you've never lived in Alaska. I mean, and
no.
it felt so real.
Yeah, so I grew up in a family, first of all, that was very outdoorsy. Um, my parents, chose to go camping on vacation, and my father would go backcountry camping. I mean, we used to have to hike mountains when I was little, and some of us didn't like it as much as the others. I complained
Was
a
it
lot.
you? Was it
It
you,
was
Adriana?
it would be me. It would be me. Although my memories are amazing, but I have a brother who ended up becoming an outdoor guide. I mean, he's an adventure guide. His job is to climb high mountains and take people, and he has saved people's lives. He was a climbing guide for a while on Mount Rainier. He has done a lot of the world's highest peaks, and especially in the U.S. He's done so. He's done Denali a few times, and he's had to evacuate. He's always been an inspiration to me as an individual, and what he's able to do. But also, he's a good source of information. So I would reach out to him and ask him, "Is this possible? If you twist your ankle, And I think I called him during when I was writing Whiteout, and I asked him about like blood on ice and stuff like that. Like, what happens? So that was one. He was a good source of information. And Whiteout as well. I talked to this couple who had been cooks in Antarctica. One of them did a full year cooking at the South Pole. So I literally got to talk to these people and get firsthand stories, and they have a restaurant now out west. It's pretty cool. So with the Alaska book, with Uncharted, my biggest concern. So I researched the environment. I researched different places because I needed to set it in the right place. I didn't want another book that was set entirely on the ice, even though I knew it would be exciting. But there were issues too, because there's a helicopter overhead.
I mean, ice just can't be the continuing theme.
Right. It's kind of boring, right? So they need different varying challenges. So anyway, I ended up sort of making up a place, which is what I tend to do a lot because I use artistic license. I did in Antarctica too. I put mountains where there aren't mountains, and anyway, I did a ton of research on the airplane, which is funny because the airplane is like, a few pages out of the book. The amount of reading and watching and, looking at forums.
I mean, because it's early, right? Leo's flying this absolute bucket of rust to try to go get who she thinks she's trying to get. It changes as it goes, but it was interesting, that scene, and I think it speaks to like world building and it happens early on, and I immediately bought everything. Like it was the thing. It was like the litmus test that I was like, okay, right, I'm with you. Like whatever. I mean, I don't know anything about planes, but it just felt so real that I was like, well, clearly you're an authority and I'm in. So well done.
Thanks. I did a lot of research. I watched so many videos. I looked at the because depending on when it was built, it had different characteristics, and like certain ones wouldn't be able to do this. So I looked at like the manual, and like would read through the manual.
Oh my Lord.
It was a little extreme. And then another thing, I remember researching, rafts, pack rafts, which are is a raft you can stick in your backpack and take out in case you need that. And that was another thing I put a lot of time into pack rafts, so.
There's along that thread, they have to, Leo arrives, they have this, who are you, what's going on? They become teammates and they have to run because they're being chased by bad guys. And Elias has a backpack. He's got this backpack ready. And I mean, I love a backpack. Because you get halfway through the book and then you're like, shit, he's got to have this. And then you got to go back and you have to add it to the backpack. It's like the magical backpack. He's got 7,000 pairs of socks. So tell me about and it's such an important plot point in any kind of like romantic suspense survival story. So tell me how did this backpack change? I was charmed by that.
Oh, that's such a good question. How did it change? Well, definitely there were more socks added because
I mean, carefully wrapped. I loved it. Oh, it was just such a good detail. You're like, yes.
Yeah, those socks were not getting wet. It's funny. Well, I'll get back to your question, but the thing about that backpack is the whole competence thing with Elias didn't come in my first writing of the book. I think it came in maybe the second version or through my revision process, because he was just so well prepared, but I didn't know that when I started writing the book. So the backpack and like what would appeal to Leo, right? Like somebody who's prepared, somebody who knows what he needs. So that was a big deal. So the backpack, he almost got a raft. He did not get a raft. That was removed. And there were other things removed, like a personal locator beacon he wouldn't have because he doesn't want to be found.
Right. That would have been helpful as the storyteller, but yeah, sorry.
Nope. He didn't have a sat phone. He didn't have a weapon. I mean, really what he needed for survival was clothing. And then there was a firemate starting kit. Oh, he needed something to sew up stitches. So I needed to make sure he had a needle. It's funny.
Like he had, you give him a dog and like Bo. And at the very beginning of my career, writing for Harlequin, I had a dog in a book and the dog got killed. And my editor was like, yeah, you can't do this. And I was like, but it worked. Like, come on, it's so good. And she was like, no, nobody gets more letters from readers than the person who kills the dog. It's like, I'm reading this book. And my worry about Bo is like the hero and heroine are going to be fine. But I was like, oh my God. And I was like, you're right. If you had killed, Bo survives, everybody. Spoiler alert, sorry.
Yeah, so I got a ton of emails. I've gotten more emails about Bo in that book than anything else. And people will write me. In my first email was somebody, a review copy, they were reviewing and they said, I can't read any further unless you tell me right now, does Bo survive? And the grandma, because there's Amka, the old woman, and she says, do Amka and Bo survive? I need to know. I can't read anymore. So I reassured her and let her know that yes, indeed, they do survive. And you kind of like, I've had to write that over and over again. If you look at the reviews, people get upset. They get worried. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and if it was not romance, if you were writing pure suspense I would have been in more fear, but
yeah,
you know the rules.
I do. And I didn't want her to die. I liked her too much anyway. So
no, it's true. Well, the other great character in this book is Ash, who is, and you can't see me listening to the podcast, I'm using air quotes, the bad guy. But is he? Like, we're going to see Ash again. He's super riveting, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Is that your plan? What are you doing?
Yeah, Ash is coming back. Ash, it's funny because I really like my secondary characters. I have this problem, which is that I get more into them while I'm writing than my, hero and heroine, and I have to go, but I have to like pull myself back and stop focusing so much on them. So Ash and Amka, two secondary characters who were extremely, I felt very close to while writing it. Ash started off as a little more murderous than he is. So the first draft, he is definitely a little more vicious. However, he always had that position for me of a character that I loved and that I wanted more of. I never ever wanted to let go of this guy, so he definitely, and he evolved. And I think because it's a romance, he evolved in a certain direction. Maybe in a dark romance, he would have evolved otherwise.
A different way, yeah.
Yeah. I love Ash. I would love to give him a book. I would love to.
I would love to read that.
But yeah.
Did you say it's not going to happen?
I said I don't know. I can't guarantee that Ash will get his own book, but it might. I'm definitely leaning that way.
I mean, it is hard when you're like, when these characters arrive and you're like, oh wow, look at you, fully formed. I don't even have to do anything. You're just saying stuff and walking around like a real person.
Yeah. He's got a lot of things that I like. I mean, I love a just haunted past.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's super compelling. So the other part about this book that I feel like it's one of those things where it had to have been so much harder in the writing of it than in the, reading it. It's pitch perfect, which is the romance where you just have two people constantly cold, worried about their socks. But like, it's the romance where every look is weighted. Right. And not in a repetitious way. And like it all builds, like this look means this thing, and then this hand touch, and then this amount of trust. Like, and those are delightful to read, but they are not easy to write. Was it hard? I mean, I say that as myself. Maybe you're in a different league.
I think I had a harder time in this book building to more intimacy. I could have gone on with those subtle touches for days. I could have left them it could have been the slowest burn in history, just like
glancing hands.
Yeah, actually, there was a hug in the book. And I wish I could remember who asked for a hug on Twitter one day. Somebody tweeted about saying that there needed to be more hugs. And I remember thinking, oh, they need to hug. And so I should go find that hug because I feel like that person needs attribution. There is a hug, which I think is one of the most intense moments in the book. And it's pretty early, well, it's probably halfway through, but it is just, sometimes a good hug, man. That was one of those moments for me when writing that. I just got chills. And so I can't remember if I saw that tweet before writing it or if I just written it. There was some serendipity involved. And I remember thinking, thank you, Twitter, Yeah.
It's funny. One of the first classes I ever took, I'm gonna blank on the name. Maybe it will come to me. But she was a Harlequin writer for years and years, and she was talking about how you have to build those things. You have to the hands have to touch, the hand on a shoulder, the hand on a hip, the hug. Like you have to build those things, and a lot of times we just blaze right through them. And the power of when you read it well done, that slow stepping forward, and it's really well done in this. And by the time they're ready to go for it, you're like, yep, go for it, please just go for it.
Do it. Well, it's tough in these books too, especially with these two, since they were complete strangers. I didn't want to keep them on the road for 3 weeks, hanging and struggling and hiking, because there's this sense of urgency with the helicopter flying above. And so that was a big thing. I needed to somehow build to a believable place without pushing it too hard. You know, neither one of them was going to jump into the sack. It just wasn't
Right.
possible. So that was my challenge. I have a tendency to do too much of a slow burn. We were talking about that earlier. I'm very much a slow burn kind of person. So it is, some of my favorite books don't have the slow burn, like Liberating Lacey by Anne Calhoun. Sex in the parking lot, first scene, and yet it is one of the most tender, gorgeous, you know, build-ups throughout the book. But
you know, I bet if we go back and look, because Anne Calhoun is a hero. I bet if we go back to that scene, she does those touches, but it just happens faster. I bet she does. I bet she builds up to that.
Too. She has a way too of just describing her heroine in that book and making her, it's this dichotomy of this woman who's extremely modest on the one hand and also like really into sex on the other, and really wants to do this. So it's really well done. The balance is perfect. That book is gorgeous.
It's a masterclass for sure. But like you are, so you're working on these romantic suspenses. Hopefully we're going to have some more. It would break my heart if we don't, but I get it. You're your own person. You've got a guy caught in a mine at the end of this book.
So I can tell you about that a little bit. It is not. Please do. The book is not written, but the book is in my brain. So okay, Blackout. Good. It's called Blackout. So and this book is almost entirely in the dark. That is the challenge of this book. Jesus
Christ, Adriana.
I thought, like, what's the other frontier? You know, what is the other new frontier? So it's underground, two people caught. Definitely more of an enemies kind of thing at the beginning. They're not necessarily enemies, but they're not friends at all. It's Ants, who's a very flirtatious, not a very serious seeming guy who kind of rubs people the wrong way. He's a little bit vulgar in his approach to women and so on. But he ends up with this geologist who is a very serious, straight-laced woman. I mean, it's like, you know, the perfect opposites kind of situation. And they end up in the dark together and have to race, you know, out together, but through the dark. So there's more research happening.
You're making me feel very, 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 very lazy. Take that, every romance author out there. It's time to up our game. So you have these romantic suspenses, but much like the first series that you wrote, the Under Her Skin series, you are writing these like and self-publishing these very sexy, very emotional, very romantic stories. So you've got a series called Loving the Billionaire, Loving the Mountain Man. There's more in there. And then you've got this book called Daddy Crush that is on Radish right now. So if anybody is like looking for something to like sink their teeth into, go to Radish, which is a platform for reading, and pick up this book. Although I think you can still get it on Amazon and everything too, right?
Yeah. Oh. You can get it everywhere.
You can get it everywhere.
Places. Yeah.
So what are you working on in that vein? In that area?
Okay, so the next book is Kink Camp, which I think is going to be a series. I've already got, you know, there are characters who, again, secondary characters who started coming out and sort of nudging me and telling me what was what. So Kink Camp is a very, I was going to say a very dirty, kinky book, but honestly, it's me, the queen of the slow burn. So while it is very sexy, and it definitely explores some kinks that are a little bit, I guess we see sometimes, like Cara McKenna, Willing Victim, kinks that are sort of consent-based kinks, but it's all consensual. And in this case, Kink Camp is this idealized place.
I'll let my dog in. I shut the door to my office and she gets mad. And now she's going to bark to get out in like 2 seconds. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so Kink Camp is this place.
It's this amazing place where you can go to live out your fantasies, basically. And so, So that's it. I mean,
Like I'm imagining, I mean, I haven't read any of this, so feel free to send it my way. But I'm imagining it like 9 Perfect Strangers, but instead of microdosing, they're just working out their kinks.
Working out the kinks. So I think I have like 3 books in my brain for that. And Kink Camp is, I mean, it's unlike anything I've ever written. At the same time, I kind of love it because it's this microcosm of the real world, and it's kind of a huge adventure. I like it because it's a place on earth where people can go and just be totally themselves. And I love it. I'm having such a good time. I told you about it earlier, but it's very sexy. There's the first book is a primal kink book, which I haven't really read a lot about. Actually, I don't think I've read any romances that have primal kink. And so it's a kind of like,
what is primal kink?
So it's when people let their sort of base animal out. So there's kind of almost a shifter kind of, feel to it, although it is, based on a real kink. And these people just, so there's, in this case, there's a hunter and there's prey, and these people act out their fantasy. Yeah.
Once again, Adriana up in the bar. That sounds awesome. So do you like have the other kinks figured out?
I have a couple. Yeah. There's one that's a kidnapping one. So I want to say, and I'll put a forward or a note in the book, but these are based on a real place that I've been to.
What?
I don't know if I told you that.
I would like to know more. What is this?
I will tell you all about it. It's Kink Camp. So there are a few of them. I'm not supposed to really talk about like where they are or names and stuff, but there are a few of them out there. Places where you can just sign up and go to camp for a week and just live out your
whatever
thing.
it is.
Yeah. So kidnapping was one of the things offered in the camp that I went to. You could sign up for kidnapping. So kidnapping is definitely the second book. And then the third book, well, yeah, there's a lot of different stuff.
That is fascinating. That's seriously fascinating. And like I in the conversation we were having earlier, you're struggling with like what is the expectation of a reader picking up a book called Kink Camp, and what is the story that you're telling? And that's a difficult needle to thread, right? So tell me a little bit about, like, I don't know that I've ever asked you this, and my sense is that you are an author who does quite a bit of editing.
Like self-editing, you mean? Like early on?
All editing, all kinds of editing. Like I feel like you really hone that story.
Yeah, I go back to the beginning. It depends on where I am in the story. Uncharted, for example, I think I went back and rewrote the beginning for 6 months. It's one of the reasons it took me so long to get it out. I cannot move forward until something is right. And then, chronologically, it has to feel right for me. And with Kink Camp, it's been the same thing. I have written and rewritten and rewritten, and the problem is the slow burn again. Sometimes my burn is so slow that it's like barely on fire. And so I had to start over with Kink Camp. But the new beginning, and here's the thing, from an author standpoint, I have shown the beginning to readers, to some of them, but now it's a new one. So they have seen the old beginning. Extra bonus
That's
little
right.
scene for you guys. Yeah. It's been a learning process, but I think honestly, I will forever and always just go back and fix and fix and fix before I can move on. I think I'll always be like that.
Yeah. To the point, like, that I just finished probably one of the hardest editorial process that I've ever had. And I've had some real doozies, but this just never seemed to end. And it was like, my attitude about it was like, well, I'm just moving the shit around. Like it's all shit. I'm just like, I'm dressing the shit up in bows. but little distance, and it, all feels better.
Yeah, I mean, like I told you earlier, the problem with kink camp up until now, and I think I've gotten it right. So I'm feeling like, whoo, this is the home stretch. But I was writing it was a different kind of shit, It was nice shit, but it wasn't the shit that those readers want.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, when you call something kink camp, you're just like you've got to deliver. You really do.
Yeah.
Like Daddy Crush, right? Like
Yeah.
you're Daddy Crush. And you did. Like you did. And that's part of why it's so successful, right? Like you married your voice, the story you want to tell, exactly to the romantic fantasy that the readers wanted with that title. And I mean, look what happens.
Yeah. However, I did rewrite that thing like 17 times. So same situation.
I think that's just a thing you do.
It is. It's like my self-flagellating process. I just have to torture myself in order to get the book out. Occasionally, I'll have a book just sort of come out without any effort. Loving the Mountain Man. I just sat down and it just flowed. That thing, easy, but that doesn't happen that often. It's been a while. I think I'm about due for one of those.
Yeah. I mean, that's when you're in this business long enough, when a bad one is coming. You start to feel it. You're like, ooh, this one is gonna be. But you also know that when you're due.
Yeah.
And I've have you been able to take a break over the course of the last few years? I mean, I know that we're all under such incredible stress that, are you constantly trying to write? Or are you?
Yeah, that's the problem. I think I'm constantly trying to write, and I've never just said, you know what, take a month off, do something else. And I think we all maybe needed that at some point in the past couple of years. As it's been for everybody else, it's just been super intense, very kid heavy, very school at home heavy. And trying to write, I did take a break during the first lockdown in France. We had a couple months pure school at home. We were doing 4 or 5 hours a day. And I definitely took a break from writing at that point because there was no point. But yeah, when kink camp is done, the problem though, Molly, is that I always have these ideas and there are things I want to write and I get excited. So I want to work on Blackout and I want to get that out. I have another book that takes place in France that I'm just gagging to write, but I'm not letting myself do it until kink camp is out.
Which book is this? This wouldn't be the one I know about, would it? That great
I think
idea.
So, women's fiction. Yeah, that one. I'm not allowing myself to even think about it. I mean, I'll think about it when I'm like out walking and sort of trying to get inspiration, or just inspiration just happens to come and sort of taunts me. And yeah. So that one's there. It'll come someday.
I can't wait for it. But I know how that is, right? Like it is a privilege, the privilege of being able to have something percolate, like a really exciting idea. Like I mean, I know the bones of that idea. For anybody who's listening, it's an incredible idea. We're not going to say it, but it's the kind of idea that needs to percolate.
Yeah. I needed the heroine of that book to come to me, and she wasn't like, Ash. She wasn't just all done when she arrived. She needs a little more building.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait for any of these and all of these. And everybody out there, if you're not going to pick up, if romantic suspense in the wilds of Alaska or Antarctica is not your bag, pick up Daddy Crush. If Daddy Crush is not your bag, pick up Under Her Skin, which is like pure, solid, deeply emotional romance, guaranteed to heavy sigh and cry for sure. Adriana, thank you so much for taking the time.
Molly.
It's always good to see you.
It is.
I hope this is over soon, and yeah,
it'd be nice. I know. One day.
Everybody out there, have a drink, read a book, stay safe. Till next time, guys.